welcome to the Exploring the Vintage NFT Space podcast with Zero G. I'm very excited to have with me today Max, also known as Marisol Vengas of the Curio Cards, one of the original artists, and someone who's done a lot of work in the space. So thanks for joining me today, Max.
No problem. So happy to be here, man.
Yeah, so Curio Cards have really blown up in the last couple of years, especially since that rediscovery. But I wanted to start out and talk about you as an artist, and also you and how you got started with crypto. Let's start with the crypto aspect and talk about where did you first hear about it, and also what led you to make your first purchase, right?
Yeah. So, oh man, I have such an unusual connection with crypto, and this story is like so crazy. Like I've never really invested in it or purchased it, and it directly comes out of my art making practices.
Mm-hmm.
So art led me into crypto, and early on in the early 2000s, I went to school to study computer science.
Mm-hmm.
Completed most of the classes, and I decided I didn't want to do it. And I kind of had a problem with just kind of how sterile it was, and I realized that in that process, all the manuals of all the programming languages were public and they were online. And I remember taking like some classes, and we actually had like written exams in computer science. Like, this is absurd. Like, I really wanted to just build my own graphic software. And they're like, you're going to have to go, on your 5th year of college, you might be able to do that. And I'm like, oh God, this is ridiculous. So I became way more interested in art. And the path getting into that was that it was really interactive and engaging. And I started learning, there was like this biome in my art classes. So people would just be very like kind of hyper social and like show you a technique, and it's really, really awesome. And yeah, the coolest people I met were artists. I'm like, oh shit, like that. So I went on that path. And towards the end of my degree, I learned about, I would say it's like a 6th or 7th category of art. And so, you have your printmaking, your drawing, your painting, sculpture, ceramics, performance art. And then you get into this other one called social engagement in art, or social practice in art. And this basically, I would say the main differentiation, there's this kind of like multi-directional communications layer associated with it. Not to say the other ones don't, but to say it's more accessible to having like co-creation with another person. So, most art as we know it is like, you have like a painting or a drawing, you put it on the wall and someone sees it, and the information communicates one direction. So I went to, I was really interested in this interactive style art, because I'd done other community activities. Like I did a video scavenger hunt. I did these really interesting kind of like performative based interactions, but I didn't know that they could be perceived as art. So then when I got into focusing on this, I got full permission from my instructors to focus on that rather than focus on printmaking, which was my kind of like forced degree at the time, because you had to pick a certain category and narrow in. And I realized with that type of art, I could come up with my ideas first and then pick the best tools. It's otherwise like there's this absurdity to like having to pick your tools first and then figure out how you're going to use them and what ideas you're going to use them on. So I love that as well, the flexibility with that. If I wanted to, I could, with that style of art, I could get on the computer, I could write a program, I could make software or whatever.
Yeah, it seems kind of backwards to be hamstrung by a medium when it's really the concept that's important, right?
You totally nailed it. And so I made a ton of these socially engaged projects, like maybe like 24 of them, like full bodies of work around this. And at the same time, I was doing like consulting. I started doing consulting, and that's like 2000, like early 2000s. I was working for some companies consulting, but then I started taking it more serious, like 2005, 2006. when they started finding out that I was an artist, they were like, oh my God, you got this guy's crazy, or like, are you sure you're not spreading yourself too thin working on our stuff as well? So so that encouraged, like, getting into the aliases and stuff. But the way it connects with crypto was I uh, I a lot of my work dealt with communities, and kind of like I became kind of like more of like a stage producer, like director, and facilitated an interaction within the community. So a lot of the projects are like, oh, we're gonna hang out and like draw together. That'd be like a simple one. It's
Yeah.
social engagement through art. That's kind of like a superficial example. Another example might be like, hey, meet up at this parking lot. We're gonna like make some signs for the public to hold up, and so invite the artist friends down, and like and there's like no leader. It's autonomous. Like, people would ask me like, well, what can I make? What can't I make? I'm like, use your own discretion. I don't care. Like, we're just here. It's our job. This is what we're doing together. So that one was called free custom signs. So if you ever search me, yeah,
Okay.
there's tons of
Oh,
these
that's cool.
projects, and they go on and on and on. And so one of the more important ones I came up with was a money system. And this was in 2007. I architected it.
Wow.
And then I started releasing it towards the end of 2007 into 2008. And so I made a currency, and the currency was called viral monetary units. And it wasn't just like, it wasn't just like a token. It wasn't just like paper money and like, here you go. There was actual, like, it was an economy. There was 3 denominations. One was 100 VMUs. One was 200 VMUs. One was 500. And respectively, they were coffee, beer, and a meal or food.
Oh,
So,
nice.
so if someone got to, if you had, they gave them out in stacks of 100. So imagine getting like this huge stack of money. I think I have some, I finally got some back this year. It was a huge deal. Because I gave them all out. I gave out, I think it was over 60,000 of them, and all of them were serialized. All of them were tracked on a ledger. Like, they
No
were
way.
like literally, yeah. I actually started tracking these notes and who I gave them to, and so if you would get someone to accept that, so let's say I gave you a stack of 100, and you get someone to accept these notes, like, thanks for the coffee, here's a coffee note. They fill out the back of it, they send it to my bank, and then my bank sends them 3 times the value. So it's like quantifying like a gift giving type of interaction through hyperinflation. And so I got that out there, and then within a few months I started getting like emails and letters and people spending them, and just really profound experience, because it got me into like reevaluating like whoa, like I found a way how to make a distributed type of artwork, where then people are making these performances in other locations, right? And oh man, it was great. I mean, I got emails from economists and graduate students. I was cited in like Wikipedia for like gift giving economies. I looked back on there and it's like gone, but anyway, it turned into being a part of a bunch of different art shows. And then I was in this one art show in New York, New Jersey, and I became friends with a bunch of people, other artists that had made money art, and I got on some email list about different community currencies, and that's how I found out about Bitcoin. And I found out about it before it was, the command line wallet came out. So
Yeah.
and I knew about like the double spend problem and these other things. I was like, no one solved that. This has to be a joke, like that's where I was coming from. I'm like, well, I kind of made this parody joke. It's a serious project discussing like the economy and that. But so when I saw the white paper, I was like, this is funny, like haha, like this is unsolvable. And then later when the command line wallet came out, downloaded it, and I remember something weird, like you could send it to anything you paste in there. There's no validation.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And I'm like it wasn't checking anything. So like like, this is a scam. This is a, like, no one said it was, used the term like that, but I was like, this is funny, like, haha. And then I remember seeing it being on like Mount Gox, and I'm like, this is even funnier. Like, this is a joke. But we would, exchange, Bitcoin in very large quantities as kind of like a joke for,
Yeah.
someone's mom. Or like, just,
Yeah.
it was like it was fun and interesting, and we nerded out on it. So that's how I got exposed to Bitcoin. And I don't think I took it. I definitely didn't take it as seriously as I should. But I didn't take anything seriously back then. So
Yeah.
whatever. And
No,
then yeah, and then
it's
just
it,
yeah. And I was just gonna say, and then just really quick, then I became part of a on the sidelines of a bunch of crypto projects since then. But that was like my main introduction. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I had the same, like a similar reaction the first time I used Bitcoin back in the day, which much later than you. I started out in 2012, and I had a similar reaction as is. It wasn't that it was unworkable. It was that this was so complicated that I couldn't imagine normies using it. Because again, like I was like, well, this is cool, but how are you going to get like again a grandma or someone to like cut and paste these addresses and stuff, and the whole concept of the wallet being on your computer was also like, it's like, I think this is just going to be a nerd thing, so um anyway, so similar.
And
But
And I mean, we thought it was, we for sure thought Bitcoin was going to be used everywhere, like within the first couple of years of inception,
Mhm.
but then it didn't happen. And then it's like, and we thought it was going to be used for payments. And then, over the years, it's
that
like,
was
when
my
is it? Yeah.
that was my disappointment too. When I first got a little bit, and early on, I would follow the news, and for a while, and I even for a time I saw some of Mad Bitcoin's YouTube show back in the day too. I'd read CoinDesk and stuff because I was the same thing. I was just waiting for adoption and waiting for people for it to like to be useful, and outside of like Steam and some other stuff, it just, I don't know, it just seemed to never take off. That's one reason I'm kind of excited about the NFTs, though, is that kind of like what was really fascinating about your viral monetary units is it's not just a performative art thing, but you're also incentivizing people to participate too. So, and that's also how I see the NFTs is like we're incentivizing people to use it. Does, and again, it doesn't have to be Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever, but to use an NFT, you're going to be interacting with a blockchain. So we're onboarding people to crypto, probably for most of them for the first time, and that's the carrot, to really rope them in.
Yeah. And NFTs, I really feel is like the first step of mass adoption, and it's like crypto. I mean, in the, fungible token sense, I'm like, uh, I don't know. I think most people will access it without even seeing an integer for the first time. I think that's
Yeah,
where it's going. Yeah.
yeah, that's cool. Um, yeah, so that's a really interesting that you got in so early. One of the things that was really rough early on too was, like you said, the wallet support. Were you just sticking with the command line wallet, or did you move to something more sophisticated like Armory or anything like that along the way,
Um,
or hardware wallets, or?
yeah, I mean, I kind of like, yeah, the early command line days, and then what was the other one? I think I can't remember the name of the first one that I used, but it was like kind of like a generic one that all the others were forking back then. I mean, it
Okay,
might
yeah,
have just, it was like Bitcoin Core or something. I don't know. I
yeah,
don't remember the exact name
yeah.
of it, but um, and then yeah, I remember those early like forks that would pop up on the Bitcoin talk threads, and everyone's like starts mining it, and they're like, hey,
Yeah, I
like
know.
this is, like that was wild. It was like the first in, first out. And remember seeing things going up like 20,000%.
Mhm.
Um, and it's like, oh yeah, I got like a couple bucks for like doing their socials, or for doing like their
Yeah.
banners. And then it was like, better cash this out on what was the Australian exchange? Dude, I feel like such like an old person trying to remember this
I,
thing.
I
Yeah, yeah,
Cryptopia, right?
yeah, Cryptopia, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I mean, that was pretty wild to just kind of see that. So when, when like eventually when like ICOs came out, I'm like
Yeah.
I'm not gonna invest in any of these. Like this is there's this like human behavior problem that's gonna reoccur in this instance as well. So but anyway, yeah. So
One
I
one
guess
thing
I
I
kind of
think.
just doxed myself there, but yeah, I've been around since like literally like early days of this stuff. Yeah.
Well, one thing I thought was, I mean, we can edit that out if you'd like,
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. Okay, yeah, it's all good.
but one thing I thought was funny is how you see, at least I've seen over the crypto space, you see these cycles. Like remember, like you were talking about earlier, that just any altcoin would just pump immediately after it was like released on Bitcoin Talk, and then later on there are these like different cycles. One was like the POS shitcoin cycle, where like remember there's that phase, and then it went to like the master node shitcoin cycle. I don't know. Well, it seems to go in cycles with a lot of these fads, but I guess getting back to like crypto and your intersection with art. So when did you first like become aware that crypto could be used to host or tie into non-fungible assets?
I mean, as soon as Bitcoin came out, I was thinking about it. I remember having discussions in one of the offices I have here in Chico with a good friend. I mean, there was only Bitcoin out, and so yeah, over 10 years ago, we were talking about like how these could be representing art and things like it was kind of like an obvious connection.
Yeah.
But then it was kind of like when it actually came out with well, I guess there was like some of that on Namecoin, and that was pretty cool. Like that was like when Namecoin came out, I was like, oh yeah, this is for sure going to be a thing. And then just seeing how slow the adoption was on that, I was like, this is not going to be a thing. Never mind, I was wrong. And then I remember Counterparty just being like holy shit, like this is it. Like this is going to be it. And then just like how slow and bulky and like I'm like, whoa, couldn't they change the images on there? There was like too many like yeah, it didn't seem as permanent as it could have been.
Yeah.
Or it seemed to be like flawed. So I remember like really being interested in that, and then seeing a lot of like hype around the rare peppies, and I really wish I was a little more public. I to be fully honest, I've not been public about my crypto connections until about 5 years ago. And then I was like, fuck it, I just need to get it
Yeah.
out there. I just need to like it's okay. It's not as wild west and as scary as it was back in the day. So but yeah, I remember, yeah, Counterparty was kind of my well, definitely was my introduction to like, oh yeah, we can actually have tokens that represent art, and this is a thing. And I thought it was so weird that I'm like, why are people only doing this with like Peppy the Frog? And part of me like, okay, well, this is bizarre, but whatever. And I still yeah, acquired some of those. And yeah, I had friends that bought like basically they swooped on the names, like they
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
squatted on those. And I'm like going back to them like, hey, like remember when you squat on those? Like you should turn those into NFTs. Like you can do this now with like yeah, there's all these awesome tools. You can have them listed on OpenSea and sell like 1 million. You could sell your whole set of tokens. Like someone might want it. Someone wants that out there. Yeah.
Well, I guess backing up before we go a little bit more further with the NFT part, so we talked about your experiment with the VMUs, like philosophically, or what was your attraction to cryptocurrency, or what was your feeling about that and what it presents as an opportunity? And I don't mean
Yeah.
financial.
Yeah, totally. I've always felt like there's all these like really there's a lot of friction in extracting value out of a system. I mean, I was in school altogether. I mean, even taught at the college later on, but altogether, I was in school like 12 years or something. And I'm like, but for what end, like just to make a couple bucks coming out of it. It's like, oh man. And just seeing how other friends, went and got this lengthy degree, and then, and they're like, they started to be in poverty. So it's like there's this like concept in this theme that you can, work hard and get a degree and like follow all these like these the system, and then you should be able to extract value coming out the other end, and that wasn't happening. And so I think what crypto attracted me, what was like most attractive early on, is like it was kind of like a path to being able to extract value almost immediately and instantly. Like I did this like Twitter banner, like, okay, well, here's like some random number of tokens that don't represent anything. But if we get enough people, if we get this network effect and get it into enough people's hands, it like creates value out of thin air. And I'd already been thinking about these concepts. It wasn't like too weird to just see it in a digital form. So, and kind of working with communities and like thinking about like, well, how could we reward people for participating in these projects where it could meet some needs? How it could actually like, meet some needs without relying on the system that we don't have control over. And then, I mean, down the road, I found out about like, hyperinflationary economies and like overprinting currency and other things like that. I'm like, oh, well, yeah, those feelings I had back then that I couldn't quantify and didn't quantify yet were actually becoming realities. So yeah, I mean, it all kind of made sense from like ideological perspective. And
Sure. Yeah, I know. I know another thing that appealed to me too, besides that, was the ability to instantly transfer without an intermediary was a big deal to me too. Even that was before I even really kind of cottoned on to, or we really saw like payment censorship in full effect. Where we had later on where we had Silk Road, and like even today, there's a lot of things that you can buy online that are legal or quasi legal in your country, and you have to like pay through crypto because the payment processors won't support that, or the fees are too crazy to ship internationally. Anyway, yeah, I totally get you. So yeah, so and I also speaking of counterparty, yeah, I understand what you're talking about on the on counterparty. I was just playing around with that recently, and that's one thing that is interesting, is that what's different than some of the newer NFTs is that with counterparty, you can update that metadata or what your token is linked to after the fact. So, and unless you give away or burn the control of that token, then later on down the line that can be updated to represent something else, right? So
yeah, and that seemed problematic. I mean, it still does.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. But I mean, like you said, starting out with Namecoin, I thought that would be. I was excited for that, just for the to me the obvious like utility of a decentralized DNS system seemed really rad. I was also really surprised that didn't take off too.
When that came out, we went
Yeah.
like my super tight homies were like, holy shit, you know what this means for the internet? Like this is a huge deal. And I'm like why didn't like this, like it's so crazy how like it didn't take off. Like it seems like Namecoin should have been it for the DNS solution.
Yeah. One thing from kind of looking at I've been taking a look, and I've gotten some NFTs from the Namecoin chain recently. But one thing I remember looking at it way back in the day, and kind of looking at it again now, is like one of the few problems I've seen with Namecoin is just the way they did the economic incentives and structure for names. So essentially, you remember even back then, Namecoin was super cheap, like a buck or two or whatever. But so essentially, the cost to register a name was essentially nothing, right? So you had all these names. Like you can go back and look at through the blockchain explorer, and you'll see these guys that are just registering name after name after name after name, just camping on names. So it's like domain squatting on steroids, really. So that was one of the, I think, and that's one thing that ENS is they've changed that model in order to disincentivize the squatting as well. So I think that's those other than that, I still think it's a really rad concept. I'm surprised it, like you said, I'm surprised it didn't, even for independent stuff, I'm surprised it didn't get used more, you know?
Yeah, totally, totally. But I
So
mean,
when did you,
those things will inform other people down the road, you know, like, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, exactly.
definitely. Yeah.
I mean, well, that was the Model T of, you know, you need a proof of concept before, you know, and if that is all it ends up being, then that's okay too. But, you know, we'll make it in the future too. I still think that the decentralized DNS is something that's important, you know. But yeah, so you were aware of NFTs all the way going back to Counterparty.
Yeah.
So when did you start making your own art and tokenizing it, or making some sort of connection there?
Oh man. Well, I thought about how to do it for sure, and definitely didn't have the tools or the resources or the technical know-how to fully execute that. Um, I remember like kind of playing with those ideas on Bitcoin too, and that those are like half baked. Like definitely was probably smoking too much weed. Um, and and then yeah, I mean, Curio Cards
Is that
um, definitely
was
was
that your
my
first?
first. That was my first NFTs. I mean,
Was it?
or first. Yeah, I mean, I think I minted. I mean, I minted assets before then for sure, but they didn't have like an artistic representation.
Okay,
Um,
it's tokens.
yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, you know, I minted on BitShares and
Mhm.
you know, Counterparty, things like that. But I didn't mint anything with like a graphic, so to
Yeah.
speak, or an image. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I feel
So
like BitShares could have been like that, one of those the first ones that could have gotten mass adoption too. There's all these
I
amazing things that have come out. I'm like, why
yeah,
haven't? Yeah, that's just another example
yeah. I
of
mean,
yeah.
I thought that was really amazing too. There were so many um, cool ideas that have come and gone, but yeah, BitShares was neat. Um, uh, I think there were a couple of what was the platform that had the it was kind of like the kind of like a web page that had the monetization
Oh,
built in.
Steam.
Steam, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting concept too, that it kind of imploded. I wasn't following it at the time, but you know, anyway, I thought that was an interesting.
It's what it turned into. It turned into Hive, and then Hive blockchain basically kickstarted Splinterlands, and now they're the most used blockchain application. You know, along with Alien Worlds and
Okay,
Pancake Swap. So at any given day, you know, one of those is on
okay,
top.
cool. Yeah, so how did you hear about Curio Cards, and well, I guess backing up. So I mean, you were obviously an early adopter of BTC and played around with Namecoin and Counterparty. So when did you first take your dip your toes into ETH, and what did you think at the time?
Oh man. Yeah, I remember yeah, very early in Ethereum as well. But I sent it out to everyone. I was like, you gotta get in on this. Like, this is your second chance to BTC. And to be completely honest, I was like extremely disappointed within like a few days.
Mhm.
And then I remember when fees got up to like 30 cents, I was like kind of like boycotting it to some degree. I was just like, this is like ridiculous. Like, this costs more than like I don't know, like how much the tokens cost. And it was just
Mhm.
like, oh man, I was so bummed out. And I was like, um, and then just seeing applications come out where like the front end, well, the front end application part of it facing the user would have to pay to interact with the app was like the
Yeah,
most like absurd. I'm like, oh yeah, this wasn't thought out at all. Like, this is totally flawed architecturally. And
yeah.
so I kind of stepped back a little bit from you know, sharing it as much as I had
Mhm.
previously when I saw it in practice. Um, and then the way I got involved with Curio Cards, I've known Tom Mad Bitcoins for
Yeah.
very long time, over 20 years.
Mhm.
And so he was, you know, he calls me up. He's like, "You still have any art?" I'm like, "Of course I have art." Like,
Mhm.
I'm like, and you know, and it's like, what's going on? It's like, oh, we got this project. We're gonna mint. I mean, there was no such word as NFTs, but we're gonna make tokens that represent the art, um, and he explained it to me, and it made perfect sense. I mean, I definitely was aware of Counterparty and other projects that could have done that, but I also was like, no one cares about like collectibles. Like this is, I was like, no one cares about like my random like social engagement project, and and so I submitted a bunch of aliases and a couple other friends projects, and they yeah, and they were kind of like their process was more experimental, so to say. I wouldn't say they had like a solid process, and like this is how they onboard the artist. It was kind of like I didn't know where to get the information about like the dates, or like, anyway, it was poorly organized, to say that. Not, I mean, I was kind of used to that, with like other community projects,
Well,
but
it was ragtag. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, it was so casual. And so I like submitted some art to them, in the form of images from the Marisol Vengas series. Yeah, just to dive into that, the reason I submitted it was the most aligned series I'd done with something that was decentralized. And I just want to go through the process because it's actually really interesting. It's a generative too, and it's this algorithm based on community engagement. So what I did is I'm like, well, I'm going to do the opposite of what I learned in school, right? So in printmaking, it was like you use like high-end paper that's cotton, so it's acid-free and it can be preserved forever. So I use like foam core, and they're like, you need to print it by hand. So I'm like, well, I'm going to print everything off with a printer, right? So in traditional printing, when you print something by hand, it's like very expensive and time-consuming process. So I'm like, I'm going to do like a higher frequency. I'm going to do like way more and make it more accessible. So like the art print is like not very accessible. You can do a small run. It takes a long time to do them by hand. It's something that, someone's going to keep forever. They'll put over their fireplace, and like, and they get, and I love that process. Like, don't get me wrong, I truly love it. But I also wanted to explore like what it is to do it completely the opposite direction. And so rather than making it like super authentic and all about me with my signature, I'm like, I'm going to make it very kind of generic, and like, and see how many people I can get to work on this that are friends and loved ones, right? So this is the algorithm. No, I'll just lay it out. I wrote a script to download buildings. And so I downloaded a shitload of building images, many thousands of them. And then I opened up in the Adobe suite, there's like bridge. I went through it, just like this one, don't like this one, like this one. And there was too many, so I had a friend help me with that. Like, go through the process. Like, I'm looking for like a certain one where like it's a good composition that we can like, work with. I batched those. I printed them all out on different color sheets of paper. So just like, and then had someone else go through and be like, hey, like put an X over the ones that suck. Like, so using some other artist judgment to kind of like filter through that. Meaning, and suck could be interpreted in different ways, but I'm like, I wanted something that there was a lot of different spots to color in. And so the next step was take them to the coffee shop, invite friends to come color them in. And and so with every Marisol Vengas series, it was the same exact process up to that point. The only real variable was like using different sizes, and and these ones are small. So that was series 6. So that was like 6 years into it. The ones that I submitted to Curio, and I think I did those the year before. So that was in 2016 I did those. So and then with that said, I did like a lot. I think there's like 300 something. I don't know the exact number. I'd have to look it up, but was about 300 of these pieces. So I had people color in on this basically this like cardstock paper that was super cheap. I got from Walmart, you know, about a ream of it for like $5 or something. Most of those have kind of faded. They're not as bright as they used to be. And then they colored them in at the you know, the coffee shop. At the same time, I also did the same type of like auto download of branches. And on those, I had a friend go through and like crop them all out to kind of like, if it was like too much plant material covering the frame, you know, or covering the that one particular image, and like crop those. So once again did that with like thousands of images. And then I found this crazy deal on acetate like years ago, like over like, I mean, this is like 12 years ago. I found this like a whole lot of acetate, like printable acetate. And so I was like obsessive using that as an alternative to resin. So I started just printing, I printed all those out, like 4 up on a sheet of paper, printed those out, cut those all up after we had them those other ones colored in. And then I had someone paper clip them together who's really good at compositions. I'm like, all right, you're the composition guy, go through, like find 2 things that line up, paper clip them together. The next day was spray adhesiving them all together. So they would, so it's spray adhesive them all, mount them to this foam core, and then as soon as they dry, then have someone else is there like cropping them and cutting off the edges so they're all squared up. So they're all like different sizes, but approximately the same size. They're kind of funny. So there's like another editing factor that person gets to use their discretion. They can make them real small. They can adjust the composition there. And then the final part to kind of like keep them all together because it's all shitty materials that fall apart. They use this actual like air duct tape to like seal the edges. And so I think it ended up costing like, I'm not even kidding you, it was probably like $0.25 a piece to make these things, or like less than that, like maybe even, I mean, I was cutting corners as much as I could on those.
Well, what would you be looking at in the traditional, like that boutique, you know, manual print process that you were talking about? Like, what would we be looking at, like, to do something like that as a comparison in terms of cost?
Yeah. Okay, so you're typically printing from copper plates, and a small plate just to use that is like a few bucks, you know, maybe even more now. I don't know, $5 or $10. And then you know, you have to use very specific materials and like very you know, and all those, they add up and cost a lot of money to use a space that has this stuff. Like I couldn't even do it in this room. Like I don't have the resources to manage the solvents, the chemicals. You need to have like a vent. You know, you're using acid to etch the stuff. It's the cost just compounds and just adds up. And then the time and expertise to have someone help you do it, you know, like you're wiping it by hand and you're like setting it on this printing press that costs thousands of dollars, and you're like, oh man, this is ridiculous. So I mean, I had access to that in college, but then after college, I'm like where am I, you know, like this isn't sustainable, we're going to do that. So I started getting more into that as kind of and I did that in parallel with I started that Marisol series while I was in school. Then afterward I was having shows with that alias at different coffee shops, and oh man, after going through that process of I'm like, I feel terrible with like somewhat the women artists have gone through, like going through that experience and get like super weird messages.
Oh, no way.
Like such weird poetry from like random creeper guys in the community and stuff. And like oh man, like I can't imagine what other stuff women artists have to deal with after seeing a little bit of that. But yeah, that was a definitely, you know, I learned a lot about like process, and the whole time, you know, as a computer science nerd, my intent is to automate that and to make something where the you know, the other side of it, the consumer can generate their own images. And so I've been thinking about that as well, but I wanted to do the process manually at first.
Uh-huh.
So I haven't released that yet, but there's some thinking into like what that looks like for,
Oh, cool.
yeah. And I don't think I'll be using Ethereum for that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So you said you started making that series in college still. So and that the ones that you submitted, you said were the 6 series. Did you make more series after that, or was that your last run?
Yeah. So after Curio took off, I like this is like early last year. So like in April, I minted the other images that I had from that series that were available, and I minted those on Wax blockchain, and then traded those for Curio cards because I didn't even have any Curio cards. Like I didn't have like a single one.
Oh, so back when those were minted, you didn't buy any at the time, or they didn't give you
No,
any as
I
part of
was
that.
correct. I
Okay.
didn't buy any, and I didn't get any from the founders,
Yeah.
and I was kind of like, well, why would I spend gas on my own art? Like,
Mhm,
or what? I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. I probably should have bought some, but
mhm.
um, yeah, I just I don't know what I was thinking. It was I don't really have a good answer for that. I mean, like, I just assumed I could get some after the fact or something. I made some
Yeah.
assumptions, whatever. But I minted those ones on Wax because then I could trade. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm one of the artists. Like, let's trade for, I want to get some of the old ones. So
Mhm,
before we even made the wrapper, I was so lucky that community members
mhm.
like wanted those, and so I offered some of those to I'm like, hey, like if you like my stuff, like trade me for some of these old ones so I can have some, and yeah, and that felt really good when the community started responding that way.
That's cool.
Um, yeah, and then back to your question, I totally just based on your last question and got sidetracked.
Oh,
Um,
we were just chatting about we were just chatting about the how many series you made after that. So like so you were
oh,
just explaining how yeah.
yes, okay. So then I towards the end of last, like, let's see, so in fall, people I accumulated a lot of the old works I had,
Mhm,
and I'd been selling a lot of those, like a lot of
mhm,
them. I had like a box about this big, and I purchased them back from old friends. There was
mhm,
actually a show that my first series, Marisol series,
mhm,
series one, I was
mhm,
going to show it in Portland,
mhm,
and I had to leave, and so I ended up leaving the art up there at a friend's house
mhm.
for a long time. Like I want to say it was like almost like um oh man, when was that? I can't. It was like almost like 10 years. It was up there,
Mhm.
and I finally got that series back, and most of those pieces were still there.
No way.
And so I went through and sold out like most
Mhm,
of those. There's a few left. There's about 100 in total of that series, and I sold a ton of those pieces and traded them and gifted them
mhm,
out to other community members. I just wanted to get them out there mostly.
mhm,
And so people kept coming back after the Christie's and the Sotheby's auction, which was like absolutely fucking crazy. I don't know how else to say it. It was just like this actually happened. Like, holy shit.
Well,
I
let's get
then
well, we can get into that. Let's
Yeah,
finish talking about
we got to get into that. But
let's talk
so
about your physical art, and then we'll segue
yeah,
into the auctions.
that sounds good. That sounds good. But after that thing happened, I was like, I got to make another series. So then I brought in some friends to help me basically like bang out the series, and I made these ones were finally big,
Okay.
and I added a couple other features to them, but I kept them in the same style of like,
Mhm,
let's make it like cheap, but actually I can spend a little more on them now. So
mhm.
so
Yeah.
I made them 12 by 18, and that's series 7. And you can see those on marisolvengas.com, and I put those up there, and so far I've sold and traded about like
Mhm,
around I think there's like 25% of them um, are out there in the wild, and yeah, so there's a ton left, and each one of those comes with 5 NFTs
oh,
that
cool.
are out of 7. So each physical piece is a one of one original piece. It comes out, and then it comes with a RFID chip,
Uh-huh.
and when someone scans it, it
Mhm.
gives you a claim link to those 5 out of 7 NFTs, and the
Oh,
user
interesting.
can the buyer can go through, they can claim those, and
Okay.
then those are transferred to their Wax Cloud wallet or
Okay.
whatever Wax wallet they have. So it's basically a way that I didn't want to say like one NFT represents one piece. I'm like, here's 5, do whatever you want with them, like gift them, sell them, like whatever. And then I kept 2 for myself, so I can like give those out to as perks to friends or whatever. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, and so I haven't used Wax before, but my understanding is that that is wasn't that the platform that Top Shots used? Is that, am I thinking, is that the right one?
No, they used something else. They used the Flow. They used Flow.
Okay.
Wax is one of the blockchains that comes from the EOSIO
Oh,
technology.
okay. Okay, sure. I know what you're talking about now. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so that was super cheap to use, I'm assuming, since it's on
Yeah.
EOS, right?
Well, EOS is a separate blockchain, but it comes from, so it's like all like EOS is a community blockchain that's launched from EOSIO, and then
Yeah.
Wax is like a corporate launch blockchain. It's still a public
Okay.
ledger, but it's
Okay.
it was initiated by the Wax Corporation. And
Okay.
they selected to use the EOSIO protocol to build out their chain. And so there's still like block producers,
Okay.
and you vote for the block producer, you want to run the network, and so it's still but yeah, like it's so fast and it's cheap, and I mean it's the most used blockchain by far, like
Mhm.
by number of transactions and number of users. Yeah, it's all stake based, so you lock up tokens to utilize the network. When you're done, you just unstake and then you get your tokens back. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's pretty good. So I decided to mint on there, and I'd already been working on different EOSIO blockchains, and so that one just made perfect sense. I was like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
familiar with this. It was like negligible amount to mint these things. It's super easy. I could just give someone a claim link. They just claim them. They get the token or they get the NFT. Yeah.
That's cool. Well, let's so you, since you finished that last series, so let's talk about your let's talk about how this rediscovery happened and how you heard about it and how that kind of blew up, right?
Yeah.
That's probably a quite a story for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It was crazy. Oh man, I don't even know where to begin. So yeah, so beginning of last year, I started getting weird, like super weird messages, people asking about cards in like
Mhm.
broken English. It was like people like definitely not native English speakers.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is this like a new weird like scam?
Mhm.
I got a couple like text messages like to my personal number. My number's
That's
online from
creepy.
other projects. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean it's not my number's online like from other stuff. And so I'm like
Mhm.
asking about cards, and then I got some weird congratulations from people I don't know, and then just like dozens of random people adding me on Facebook. And then I got one from Adam McBride,
Mhm.
and it was like he's like, hey, like uh, you know, is Curio Cards your project? Like I want to like interview you or something like that. And I'm like no, it's not mine. It's it's like Tom and Travis and I'm like, he's like, whoa, like you're the first person to reply to me, like no one else replied to me. And I'm like, that's weird. I'm pretty sure all those guys are online. Like
Mhm.
and I'm like, no, I'm just one of the artists. And the page he contacted, I had this Marisol Vengas page, and
Mhm.
I think there was only like literally like 10 likes on it or something. It
Yeah.
was more of just like a placeholder, and like
Mhm.
um and it was just kind of absurd that it like I never tried to like really sell that art. Like I'd have shows and sell a couple pieces here and there, which is kind of funny. Um, but yeah, like I wasn't trying to do like social interaction on the Facebook page ever. So it was just like super weird that anyone would message me on there. I literally think like I had like 4 creepers message me on there, like with weird poems and shit like that. And then I had like Adam McBride hit me up, and now we're like great friends. But that was like our introduction, to each other. And met him in person a few times since then and all that. But yeah, I mean, that's the rediscovery process. I mean, and then that continued for months and months. And then when, I mean, the important part was like early on in those days, I spoke with Tom. He's like, whoa, this is like kind of popping off. Like, this is crazy. Like, I'm like, yeah, this is pretty wild. I connected with Travis because I talked to him for like maybe a couple of minutes, like back then in 2017, but I didn't like, there was no like exchange really. Like, I mean, I know him from the Bitcoin meetup. I met him a couple of times randomly there in SF. And but so I touched base with him and he's like, oh yeah, and someone started a Discord. I'm like, whoa, shit, like for real? I'm like, I'm gonna definitely hop in there as soon as I get off the call with you. Like that's incredible. Like, wow, this thing's really taking off. And it was crazy to see like they kind of failed as a company or whatever they're trying to do. I don't really know fully, but there's different stories there. We'll save that for the documentary whenever that comes out. But I remember jumping into this Discord and being like, hey guys, like I'm here, like I'm Marisol, like I made a 27, 20, 29. They're like, no, you didn't. Marisol's already here. Like, who are you?
No way.
I swear to God.
Scammer's gonna scam, man.
Yeah, and they're like, no, you're fake. Like literally, like we've given cards to them, like and I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, talk to Travis, talk to Tom, and then they verified it, and then they're like, all right, we'll kick out the other Maxes and the other Marisols. And I'm like, this is like so crazy. Like people already found out that like, and anyway, that was bizarre. I'm like, oh, this is a lot bigger than I thought it was. And I think there was only like a few hundred people in that one Discord. And then that Discord had some strange stuff going on, community disagreements, and like it was just
there
like
was some
toxic,
really bad trolls that were just out of hand in there.
Yeah, it kind of got out of control, and it wasn't initiated by the original Curio Card community. It was this kind of, and I think that's like, it's cool to see that that's even a reality, that like but the effects of like what came out of that, there was like this toxic infighting and like, anyway, and so I still didn't have, just going back to like not having any cards. I went in and everyone was like trying to just give me some right off the bat. And I'm like, no, like I'm like, I can't take any, like I've never been a fan of just getting handouts and like, I'm like, had some really nice welcomes, and people were like, oh dude, I'm so happy you're here. Like, this is great. And then people started saying stuff like, dude, look at the tokens pumping, and like, I'm getting rich already. And it's like, they made a couple, like literally like a couple bucks, and they're like saying this, and I'm like, oh man, like I wish I had some. And I remember going home that night and thinking like, oh, this is so cool. Like, this is going to go places. I think this can be a big deal. Because I'm like, I didn't even know they were called NFTs. Like, I'm like, these are NFTs. We made like the first NFTs. Like, this is crazy if this is true. Like, and then I woke up at like 3 a.m, like that night, and I was like, I think I'm like I'm excited, but I'm also kind of pissed off I don't have any of these things. And so I pretty much was like I went in the group, and that day I minted out like, I think around a few thousand NFTs. I don't have the exact number, but I minted around a few thousand of them on Wax, of those other pictures that I talked about, of those other images from the previous series. And so whatever I had on files, like, I'm just going to mint these out. So most images are from like series 1 and series 6. And I think it was like all the series 6 images that I had on file were, so I minted the rest of the ones that were basically like the counterparts to the 27, 28, 29. So I went through and just like busted out all those images. And I went in the group and I said, look, like, I'm kind of on the fence about like staying in this community. Like, I'm not like a stakeholder in any regard. And you know, I want to be, but you know, like I don't know why, you know, why I should be here, but if you think I should be here, trade me for these old ones, these new ones that I minted. And everyone's like, oh man, I'm gonna hook you up, like this is great. And then everyone who even tried just to give me some, I insisted they take these other ones. And so yeah, because I didn't want to just like get handouts. Like I've always, like I said, I always felt weird about that. So yeah, I offered them, you know, in exchange of fair value for those new ones that I minted. And yeah, people were so excited. Some people were like, like I don't want those, like those other chain NFTs, like those are like, and I'm like, yeah, but you're supporting an artist, like just take them, you know. So I was very incessant on getting people to accept those. And I just love teaching about wax too, you know. I was like, I remember when I was talking with Travis, like, you got to check out, like, I'm stoked to be able to like share that, you know, share this, like this story with him and all that. But I was more excited to just be able to show him wax and like, look, we can get engagement over here, that people are building games with these things. Like this is how they're being used. And but it turns out that like most of the value is like locked up in ETH because there's some major 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 investors that have to keep the value on there for other reasons. And so yeah, there's been very few like whales that really cared about acquiring my NFTs on other chains. Yeah, and I think that's okay. I think it'll, you know, there'll be a natural progression sometime. But I'm like, look, you can do cool stuff with them. You can do like blending, and you can like combine them to make a better one, and you can do all this cool gamification that you just can't do on ETH on chain. So
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah, I mean, and you know, this is 2022 and we're still waiting for F2 to go POS. I mean, the TPS on F has, like you said, it prevents a lot of really cool things. And now we're also in there's a lot of these L2 solutions that are developing. And I don't know, I'm a little torn on the L2s because of the security implications on some of those. But anyway, we'll see. I mean, like you said, I do think it's important to have reasonable TPS on L1, you know. So I'm hoping that so with Wax, I mean, yeah, that's awesome. You know, there's other ones that are I think to have to be forced to push everything to L2 is, again, there's some stuff that you don't want to you don't want to reduce the security of that. And I think with the from what I've read of like the ZK rollups, that, I mean, essentially it's just as secure. You're just offloading some of the computation to these other processors. But again, I know in theory that works, but I would just have to, before I trusted that with anything high value, you'd have to make sure that in the event that network goes down, that you're able to bootstrap your own node in order to, you know,
yeah,
transfer your assets back to.
and that's a huge problem with all the bridges, and it's
yeah,
like
exactly.
you have central points of failure and all that. Yeah, I've definitely I haven't stayed up on it as much as I'd like to, but that's another thing that yeah, I'm not, even with Wax has its own problems and such, but they do have this like amazing cloud wallet that I can, you know, people can sign transactions in the browser, and that's like oh shit, like they don't have to download this like extra app, and like it's just easy, and it's just a stepping stone to something else. But so I love it for that. And yeah, so that's pretty much the you know, how I got into the community. And then eventually they voted on like an artist percent, which is like I was more than happy with, just to be able to get that. I'm like, all right, I'll stick around. And since then, so I've been you know, pretty consistently active. Yeah, I would say yeah, a couple to a few hours a week I'm in there, or engaging in some other way. Like I'll be on you know, town hall meetings. I got to represent Curio Cards at different art shows.
Oh, that's cool.
You know, different NFT stuff, and so like, you know, get some images up on a screen somewhere, and yeah, so I definitely continue to support it. I'm pretty sure as long as I have good health, I'll definitely continue to support it for sure.
Yeah, I really love the project. It's it's got such a we've been able to maintain such a positive community and vibe there that I'm really digging it too. So how does it feel though to have taken part in such a historic project looking back now though? I mean, like you said, that's got to be a little bit got to be interesting, right?
Yeah, it feels weird, and I still haven't fully processed it. I mean, I work a lot, like every day,
Yeah.
into the late night. So it's still it's an evolving process. It's pretty bizarre to go to a conference and then have people come up to me and be like I know who you are. Like I can't believe I get to meet you in person. And and then when I pull out, like I've been I'll like at some of these events, I'll like take the originals and pull out the original
Yeah,
one
yeah,
of one, and they're like
yeah.
like this single piece of art is like priceless to them, like holy crap, I get to hold this in my hands. And so it's fun. Yeah, I never thought it would it's like being famous for like in a very niche community, like
Mhm.
walking down the street, no one knows that, and that's fun too. So it's still yeah, it's cool. I get like random people contacting me and like wondering like, oh, do you have any advice for like a for an artist? And like I'm like, oh man, like I love that. I love teaching it. I've been teaching it since day one, teaching crypto and Bitcoin and and NFTs. I mean, so it feels good. It's like people listen a little more now. They listen a little extra. They're like, oh,
Well,
finally, yeah.
well, speaking of, let's so during last year, during the run up with Curio had, there are two really huge auctions, and your art was featured at both Christie's and Sotheby's. So how did you find out about the first sale, and what did that feel as an artist to have your art showcased there?
When that was announced about Christie's, I was like, holy crap. Like I I had lots of mixed feelings. It's important. I'm so glad you asked because it's important to record these sentiments. Um, I was so happy, right? Like, oh man, like this is it. Like I finally made it. Um, that was the first thought. My second thought it was I I remember joking with friends in college, like sitting around smoking tons of cannabis.
Mhm.
Um, we can say that now because it's like legal everywhere, right?
Yeah, who
I
cares,
know.
right?
I'm kind of kidding. I'm kidding. But I remember like sitting around and having like, and saying this more than once, where I'm like, you know, we've made so much work that eventually we'll probably be at Christie's after we're dead.
Mhm.
And I like said that out loud. A couple of friends remember that, and so to be able to experience that as a living artist is like holy shit. And then to be at Sotheby's in the same month, it's just like that's almost unheard of for like one artist to be at both. I mean, I don't know how to even determine that, but we might be one of the few projects that's actually been at both in the same month. And then you hear stories like Crypto Pop being the first Filipino artist at Christie's, and that's like that's a huge honor for not just for him but for the country. It's like so it's such a big deal, and I'm like, okay, well that's it. Let's like check that off. Check that off the list. Like that's it's just such a profound thing for to be able to experience that. And then the third thing I thought was like wait a second, these guys in the status quo traditional organization, they need us,
Yeah.
they need us so much. And then just seeing how they display the work with like the
Oh,
cord coming out of the wall, like, and then like,
that was so
and then,
disrespectful.
and like, they didn't talk to any of the artists. I mean, the interview that you're doing now is so much more important than anything that they did for us. Like, like it's cool we get the name recognition or whatever, but ultimately it's like they didn't ask us permission to use our images. which I didn't make a big deal about. I'm
Yeah.
like whatever, it does like get name brand recognition or whatever, but they've been using the same model of like exploiting artists. Like what percent of their earnings have gone back to the artists of work they've sold?
Well, I guess before we go further, I mean, I wanted to point out though that like what the point you brought up for people that aren't aware is the job that they did showcasing Curio cards was, I mean, it was disrespectful. They also did the same thing with the first, I think it was that first sale where they had the Larva Labs where they auctioned off, I think, 20 CryptoPunks, including an alien. It was super disrespectful with these traditional auction houses, how they treated these vintage NFTs and the artists. And to your point, and that was my feeling at the time too, is they need us way more than we need them. I mean, we already have decentralized markets and whatnot. It's, I don't know. That was really disappointing to see how you guys were treated in that whole affair.
Yeah, and at least like interview us, ask us for permission to
Yeah.
use the images on marketing. I know it gets in this like legality of like
Mhm.
what's acceptable, what isn't acceptable, but it's like they lost a huge opportunity. They lost a lot of trust with a bunch of these communities.
Totally.
And it wasn't appropriate for me to say anything at the time. I was like, I'm not gonna, in private, I told some friends and like, I'm like, it feels off. It feels like the term they use in NFT space, like cash grab or whatever.
Mhm.
It's like they're just trying to associate with something cool and new. And I mean, it just showed. It's like you can't fake you 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 can't fake that. Like it's like
Yeah.
they're yeah.
And to your point too, not only did they it was again, I felt disrespected with the way they treated you guys, but also they made like the commission that they take off of this is like, I don't know, for even outside of the respect thing, for to have self-respect for your own job, for you to do such a terrible job when you're taking such a huge cut. I mean, it's gross.
Yeah, I think it was like 20, oh man, 20% or 30, like
Yeah.
something really crazy. And once again, it's like just gotta, I mean, and that's the thing is like how much profit have they made since 1700 whatever, year 17, I don't know, 1750 or whatever, I don't know the
Yeah.
exact year, but like
Mhm.
how much have they made off like living and dead artists?
Yeah.
um and it's just it's the same thing. It's like they're just following the same model. Nothing is really switched up. It's cool they're taking ETH, I guess, but it's like,
Well, yeah, you guys, your auction was the Curio Cards auction was the first live auction ever denominated in ETH, which is really cool. But I guess one other thing that just occurred to me to bring up is when I was doing research for an article recently, um, one thing I thought was fascinating is last year the total NFT sales were in the neighborhood of like $40 billion, 42 billion, and the previous year to that, because the data wasn't available for 2021 when I wrote this, the traditional art market and antiques as a whole was in the neighborhood of like 50 billion. So they need us way more than we need them, because like this is a clear trajectory that we're going to surpass them as a market cap. And
yeah,
but also in terms of cultural relevancy for again younger people who are digital native, I only see this becoming more and more relevant in the future too.
yeah, totally. Yeah, so anyone watching this, if you're an auction house, definitely step up your game, talk to some artists, understand where they're coming from, because yeah, it's absurd.
I
For
mean,
sure.
at least have some respect with the way the works were presented. Just because it's digital doesn't mean it's trash,
Yeah,
and that's really how I felt that they treated those all
yeah,
of the digital.
absolutely.
Yeah, they wouldn't do that with a Renoir, so anyway, so
Totally,
moving on.
totally. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, it's
Getting
important.
a
It's
little
important
salty
point
there.
though. Yeah, no, it's important point to bring up for sure though. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, so that aside, so you've had a really wild year, with the auctions and the rediscovery. What have you been doing past that? Have you been taking on any new projects? You have any new anything interesting that you've got coming up that you want to
Yeah,
talk about?
yeah, for sure, for sure. So in the last, I mean, what happened last year was like incredible. For the last like about like the last 6 months, I've been working near full time for this product, Alien Worlds.
Uh-huh.
And so, you know, the last 5 years, I've been working in kind of like architecture of community design and blockchain and cryptocurrency. So super early into DAOs. And that kind of came about through being part of the EOS launch. So I was had a lot of friends that were involved there, and so that's when I started becoming, you know, extremely public about crypto and you know, being active in those communities. And you know, these newer style blockchains that provide a lot of the solutions to Ethereum and other things like that. They are consensus-based blockchains in the sense that they are DAOs at the chain layer. And so you're voting for who's running these chains, and you know, delegated proof of stake blockchains, DPoS, and yeah, I was really interested in how communities could use these. So I'm still kind of like carrying on those same concepts and looking for the best community tools that I can plug these into some of these more terrestrial traditional projects that I've been working on over the years. And I was like, oh man, EOS is amazing and incredible. And there's a whole nother sort of like, we solved all these problems, but then we just create all these other problems, you know, and like technology seems to kind of perpetuate this cycle. You know, on EOS, we thought we could make a lot of these DAOs very easily and have easy user onboarding, but through a variety of reasons that I really don't want to get into, is extremely complicated to do that on that. But
Okay.
there's wallet solutions, they work. There's easy onboarding, but I did launch a bunch of DAOs with different communities, and this is close to 5 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And the software we used, I did tons of due diligence and didn't want to use anything on Ethereum. I was like, we're not going to have users pay fees. We're going to cover their fees. And so the best solutions happened to be on EOS. The company that was leading it had a product called EOS DAC. And EOS DAC was a DAO that took their block producer rewards and used it to let people decide what functionality to build, because they wanted to be like a DAO maker. So it's like a DAO that made DAOs. They call them DACs. Yeah, they originally called them DACs, but I'm just using the terminology DAOs. So that they had smart contracts and they had like front end interfaces that you could, you know, it's all on GitHub. Like, go at it. You guys can use this stuff. So we launched a couple using their software. One of them was just kind of this like generalized one. We're like, we'll let the community come up with what it means and what it does. And so we had like, I think we had like a dozen stakeholders, and there wasn't like a token buy-in or anything like that. It was like, you participate, you get tokens, and then you know, and it was amazing to see like everyone created like random services or had different interpretations of it, and ultimately you're just voting for who's running this, and then they have this token, they give it out to people for work proposals, and it turned into more of like it's a regular ongoing meeting. It happens every Thursday. It's pretty fun though. It's like people just show up, they invite some friends, have some really brilliant people across a bunch of different disciplines showing up, and it's more of just a social club at this point, but we do have proposals going on still. So even though that the interface is down, we can still hit the smart contracts and still like, send out tokens. We can elect new candidates automatically. Like there's an election cycle that's happening from the smart contract. It's really cool what's happening. And so that's that one. There was another one that was around DAO education. And so it's like just how to like what are the paths to bridges to the real world and like, you know, terrestrial communities. And so with that one and this other one, we actually like went to a bunch of conferences and like shared these things and onboarded people and like had countless dinners, and we basically recruited people into these. And you know, in a very kind of like casual way. It wasn't like here's a job and like we're trying to hire. It's more like, hey, if you're interested in this, like come hang out with us. Like this is fun and cool. You don't have to buy anything. Like there's nothing. We're only trying to sell these like ideological concepts, right?
Yeah.
And then with those, we actually, you know, we approach traditional corporations and traditional small businesses around integrating these things. And one of the coolest things we did was we presented DAOs to Walmart.
Oh, no
shit
way.
you not, we went to Walmart Labs in San Diego and gave a panel discussion and presented why they should be using these things. And everyone's like looking around the room like, these guys are crazy. Like, how did they get in here? Like, so funny, man. And it's not that far fetched. I mean, this is like 4 years ago, you know? So, and today they are looking at, I'm sure they're looking at like some of the things we were talking about back then. And yeah, so just to fast forward till the last 6 months, I was, this game came out about a year ago called Alien Worlds, and it's a bunch of tasks. And this game was basically came out of the need to teach people about DAOs. So this game came from that company, from the DAO tools we used. And I would like to think they had listened to us and created like a use case. And so so a ton of my community's members were kind of like absorbed by this game, because we knew what was going to happen. We knew that it was like this is just a vector to distribute tokens through this and NFTs as well. Alien Worlds, you know, to date is like the most used blockchain application, not just game. On any given day, it's like Alien Worlds, Pancake Swap, or Splinterlands. If you go to DApp Radar, you can see those stats in more detail. But yeah, in game, there's like over 11 million used NFTs. So it's actually the biggest use case of NFTs as well, which
That's
is like
cool.
really, really crazy. Because you know,
do they incentivize people by to like, is it kind of like a play to earn type thing? And
yes, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's some, yeah, for sure. So you set down NFTs, and then you like mine this native token, and then you can use the token for different utilities. The token itself isn't a governance token, but you can stake it on one of these planets, and then you can vote for custodians of these planetary DAOs. And then when you stake it, then you basically elect your friends, elect your whoever you think is the best. And so out of these 6 planets, each one's accruing like millions of dollars of value in the native token Trillium. It's just kind of like, and it's all on chain, all in real time. They're just filling up, and you vote in who you want to run it, and then that board effectively, or council as it's technically called, can extract value from those planets to their communities. And some of them might be selfish, some of them might be, you know,
shady or not. Yeah.
So you get to pick the culture that best aligns with your values. And anyway, so I've been so I was getting a lot of friends and clients to look at Alien Worlds before launch. At launch, a lot of them got into it, and then 6 months I've been consulting for them almost exclusively. I break it up with a couple other smaller projects, but definitely Curio Cards is is up there as well. But yeah, so that's what I do. So
That's really fascinating.
Yeah, I'm the product manager there. I also support a grants program as well for extending the metaverse.
Yeah, awesome. You know, I that's cool that you know, both of those aspects are so heavily involved in DAOs. I'm kind of, I didn't get it in as early on DAOs as you did, obviously, but I've been participating in a couple, and you know, before I guess I really gelled to the idea of what DAOs are and the potential. I saw like I always imagine that essentially in the future, as we get into kind of an economic system that crypto can bring us, that it's going to be essentially now what you would call a DAO, where people like like uh, people choose to work for DAOs like for fun, right? You know, it's a complete different paradigm where like the DAOs are recruiting people instead of people like having to do a job and having to like accept whatever they can accept. There's so much potential for like for creation and value in the online space that I don't know. I think it could be a real paradigm shift eventually.
Yeah, I really think it is. You see like users, or I say users too much. We see consumers take on like multiple roles,
Mhm,
and they haven't been awarded equitable value for that.
mhm,
And I've always thought about that as like bringing people into art projects.
mhm,
Like historically in my art career, I don't even call it a career. My art practice, it's like I love being able to create an experience, and that's what they're getting paid in. Where they're
mhm,
like that's you're it's like they get to do these like tasks, but it's more just to like
mhm,
extract this like experience. And
mhm.
I've been looking for ways how to like quantify that even more so, like with like other gifts and other rewards and other incentives where it feels right and it's not contrived. And I see yeah, I see DAOs, being a little more subtle, like in the final state, because not everyone cares about governance. Not
Mhm.
everyone really, it's a certain personality that wants to take on like a leadership role, or a certain personality wants to take on a more specific like political role. But yeah, as these consumers take on multiple identities, if they're like suggesting like a flavor for a Doritos chip or a new product at McDonald's, they typically don't get like an equitable position. They just get like some bullshit coupons or like a
Yeah.
gift certificate.
Mhm.
But who's making perpetual income off that?
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe, yeah, it's like someone
Mhm.
else in the company, right? And so there's it's when in architecting a lot of these DAOs, like I've been looking at like how these different user types take on these multiple identities and where values can align.
Mhm.
And it's just so important to not have like these like unreasonable expectations of those consumers or those users, because like a lot of people don't care about certain things. So like why force them to
Yeah.
like learn these things? But that being said, a lot of people do have to like level up, and they do have to learn more about like what a private key is. Like why would you want to have multi-signature? There's
Mhm.
certain things that like can protect community money. So and
Mhm.
community, not just community money, but community resources or collective resource pools and things like that. It's like it starts creating more accountability between community members, and I think ultimately it's going to create a way better culture. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, one thing I've already, I've been thinking about and observed too is that, you know, participating in the DAOs, it's a reputational thing too, both for like people voting for you to like be accepted to again for if you're going to be a multi-sig, uh, you know, a signer or whatnot. But it's also a way of establishing your reputation in the future too. I think that that reputation is going along with the whole DAO model is going to be really important, or crucial in that space too.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's oh man, I mean, I can't think of anything else I'd rather be working on.
Mhm.
Like figuring out like the future of DAOs and how this will be integrated in society is like it's like a dream design job. It's like it's truly changing society. I mean, last time I was on a Twitter Spaces, and they're like, holy shit, it was the MFers had like their one of their bigger
Mhm.
hangouts, and I'm like, they're like asking me all these questions about DAOs, like, oh, what about like healthcare? And I'm like, that exists in DAO? Like, I'm like, it's like I didn't even like I'm
Mhm.
deep in the weeds in DAOs, but I didn't even know that. I'm like, and so there's just so much happening there, and yeah, I feel so lucky to be able to focus on that.
And I was just while we were talking, I was just thinking of like a real world example where if we get the tooling to a place where it's easy, like there's like a co-op grocery store in my town that they're electing a new board of directors or whatnot, but that's a perfect use case for using a DAO and having the voting electronically and again, that's a perfect use case. We just have to have the tooling there and the education, but that
And
game is helping.
you're like, you start taking out all the waste. You start taking out like all those things that like we've been paying for just to have kind of like placeholders or like lawyers and things like that. It's like, no, like these are our values. This is what we vote on. This is where the tokens are transferred to this person. This is what the token represents. Like it can be extremely explicit and no confusion there.
Well, that brings up something else I was kind of been ruminating, get your thoughts on is, we have a lot of the, so essentially the DAOs are kind of getting ahead of the law, so to speak, in certain regards. One thing I could kind of imagine is that we could be entering kind of like a limbo area where certain things are going to be either illegal or frowned upon, but they will be common practice anyway. In the DAO or in the online space. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I look at it like there's not going to be a one size fits all solution. The communities will choose practices that meet their needs and or they will meet their meet the values based on their stakeholders.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of DAOs are going to also be like special purpose vehicles, so to speak. So they'll be like for a specific cause, and they'll like dissolve, or maybe only exist in a certain jurisdiction for a short period of time, just to achieve a certain goal. But I see it as like, and you see this a lot right now, but they'll use plugins to meet their needs, and they'll some of those plugins will be offered by like certain service providers. And yeah, I think that even the service providers are going to have to take on some liability, and though they're going to have to use their discretion a little more than the DAOs themselves, because they actually hold like bank accounts and they hold like interface to the real world. And so, but yeah, I mean, if you're in a DAO, like you can be liable for some crazy stuff if you're making promises or not delivering to those token holders. And I mean, I really think a lot of them are being extremely risky on how they're operating. But it's going to be a cultural phenomenon. Like you get like some cultures, I think in a DAO, they're like, hey, we're all anarchists, do whatever we want, and then some of them are like, any funds that go in go out to everyone who's a citizen or whatever. So anyway, yeah, just super excited where this is all going.
Yeah, me too. I mean, like to expand on that, like one of the like most basic issues is you can establish a DAO completely in the crypto space or online or what have you. There's nothing forcing a DAO to like get created on paper or have a jurisdiction in the traditional legal sense. I mean, I'm sure you could, again, in the case of malfeasance, that, like you said, the individuals you could go after them. But it's interesting, all the different options that opens up. I mean, we could even see a nation or like an island nation have there's certain island nations that have enacted specific financial laws in order to attract foreign investment and foreign trading. And I could see easily some a jurisdiction to specifically create laws and become a favorable place just to be incorporated for DAOs or whatnot too. That'd be an interesting.
Yeah. I think like, for example, Wyoming, there's you can set up a DAO company, and then there's crypto banks. And so, they're definitely, there's a bunch of options coming about that. And I'm sure there's more than just that, but that's.
Oh yeah. I mean,
there's
too much for any of us to keep up with, really, right?
But yeah, oh man, I'm so excited where that's going. And so with Alien Worlds DAOs, don't really know exactly when those will be coming out. I would assume sometime this year, just to be safe. But what I think will happen is that there'll be different cultures come out of these, because there's 6 of them that are in the game. And some of them, you know, they might want a very open culture. Some of them might want to make all decisions together, or like seek referendums on every absurd little decision they're making of how they spend the money. Some of them might just do like marketing just for the existing leaders and take all the ton of income they have just to do billboards in Times Square every month. I mean, and that's possible. Like, all that's possible. Some of them might go like super rogue and not care about you know, terrestrial laws. Some might say, oh, we
I
have
think
to
that's
do this.
exciting.
Yeah, it's super
It's
exciting.
exciting.
So I think this might be considered like the biggest DAO experiment to date. I mean, yeah, and you can follow the accounts, and they're already live. So the accounts of where those tokens are filling up are live, and then the interface gets activated, you know, at some point this year. Yeah.
Okay. So can users participate in multiple of those planetary DAOs, or do you choose
Yes,
one?
correct. Yeah. So the token Trillium, you swap it for the planetary token.
Okay.
It's kind of like staking, but the stake
Yeah.
is actually transferable. So it sends you you deposit this token, the smart contract sends you back this planetary token, and then that's your you know,
And
through
that's what
stake
you
wave.
take.
Yeah. First, well, that is your stake, and so
Okay.
you vote for who you want to be elected. And so every planet has 5 custodians, and then every week those custodians have to claim their pay. It's not even a pay, it's like the planetary like funds. So they claim their trillium, their allocation for the week, and then they can use it for whatever they want. So they're basically then you know, they could literally just do an MSIG to create a proposal, send it to this person, send it to whatever. So they theoretically could you know, use that to make culture or destroy the culture or whatever. And then the longer term vision is to make these planets fully autonomous on their own without limits or restrictions. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. It's such a cool project. Anyway,
Yeah, I mean, that sounds really rad. I'll definitely have to check that out.
Yeah.
I love the idea of like you said, of seeing where, you know, just creating that possibility and just seeing where these different DAOs decide to go, right? You know?
Yeah. Oh man, I'm so excited. And then hopefully this organization, Alien Worlds, or the company that makes Alien Worlds, would bring back their DAO software, and then we can facilitate other organizations to utilize this. And I think they did have that up for a little bit, you know, back in the day, where you could pay a certain amount of EOS and then it like helps you mint a token, and then, you know, you select your custodians. It goes through that whole process. But yeah, I mean, I think that's where you know, people need education, they need hand holding, they need to understand, you know, not just how to send basic crypto transactions, but the value of having your community resource pool, you know, under an MSIG account, or having dynamic permissions, like how that, well, like, why would you change the keys on the account based on votes? Like, well, yeah, if like your board members are all together and then they magically disappear, then you want to have new ones be able to run that fund or that pool.
One thing that that, you know, in a DAO that I was a part of that came up too, is that, you know, having essentially the equivalent of a dead man switch, where we're requiring that all of the multi-sig holders have to check in at least once a month. So because the risk, if you have, you know, it's like the classic euphemism of having all your board members, you know, C-suite on a plane. Well, again, if you only have like a 4 of 7 or something, you can't lose too many people. I mean, you know, and we're all going to die eventually, right, or get sick and whatnot. So, you know, you don't have a lot of leeway for individuals to drop off and still be able to perform and safeguard the funds, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you can, I mean, some of these smart contracts, you can architect that into it where,
Oh,
everyone
interesting.
has, yeah, that's pretty easy to do with the EOSIO blockchains. So,
Okay. Oh, neat. It's not out of the box with like Gnosis Safe or anything. So interesting.
yeah. And
That's
then, yeah, you can, yeah, but the cool thing on EOSIO, you can do all those actions on chain versus having some, central authority or something like that.
mhm. That's cool. Yeah. Well, so we've touched on your history and art and technology. What, like, did you want to talk about any trends in the art or NFT space you see going forward that you're excited about too?
Yeah, I mean, just a generalize, we talked about this a little bit before, but there's this huge disconnect between like art and collectibles and then the utility of the games, and
Yeah,
like
yeah. Mhm.
and I mean, you see the same thing in fungible tokens. There's a disconnect between the price and then the utility of like what the project does. And I think we're going to see a major trend in the gaps bridging between those concepts for
Mhm.
tokens and also for NFTs. So we'll start seeing like um, maybe this year, maybe next year, something along the lines of like people wanting to speculate in things that actually are having significant value and significant users. Um, and we'll see a major jump there. So I
Mhm.
definitely look closer to projects that are meeting meeting their needs of their consumers. And um, yeah, but other than that, yeah, I would look out for, man, yeah, utility where communities can actually interface with these things. I love seeing like how people use collab land on their Discord to like,
Yeah.
like that feels so good. It's like awesome. Like, yeah, these collectibles can be extended into some utility. So
Mhm.
I expect more plugins and more tooling like that to really take off.
Yeah, one of my concerns though is now we've had a recent rash of security incidents with the Discord bots that have been compromised. And I know Collabland is a popular one, and I'm sure it's probably trustworthy, but it's gotten me to a level of paranoia, at least for my Vault account, where I'm not signing anything right now because I need to learn how to like with Collabland, it generates an interface on your ledger, what have you, that doesn't
Yeah.
really isn't human readable that you can actually easily
Yeah.
discern that is a legitimate uh, you know transaction that you're signing.
Yeah.
So it's there's a
That's a
lot of
problem.
yeah, I would like to see some improvements on there and making sure that that these things are more transparent about what they are for so we can be more have better security practices, going forward.
Yeah, there's so many interface problems with this technology. And
Mhm.
I mean, even just like buying an NFT or selling an NFT, like what are you even clicking on? You see,
Yeah.
like that's, I mean,
Uh-huh.
that's like unacceptable for the average
Mhm.
user. Um, yeah, I was so lucky. I got one of those like Coinbase NFT invites, and so I was
Oh
like
yeah.
playing around. I was playing around on there, like
Mhm.
clicking around, and I'm like, even on there, they don't explain to you like exactly what you're signing because you're signing. I mean, you can still sign with MetaMask, you can sign with whatever, but um, that's problematic. That's like we're not going to get mass adoption with that type of
No, I mean,
with any of those solutions. Yeah.
well, yeah, I mean, and what's really dangerous is you can have, if someone's basically uses DNS poisoning or whatever method they do to spoof a legitimate website, if we can't easily tell if the transactions are valid, then I mean that's game over, and that's well within the realm of possibility for happening too. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's yeah, I agree. There's definitely needs to be some more maturity in the tooling and the security space for sure.
Yeah, it's got a ways to go for sure. But I mean, I don't know. It's one of those things like gotta level
Yeah,
up people, but then you have to like fix the interface on from the other side of
yeah.
it. Yeah, it's happening though. I mean, yeah, man, yeah, I mean, 5 years ago, if you would have told me that NFTs would have gotten this far in society and like I even saw like the Dubai police have their own NFTs. And I'm like,
What?
yeah, I'm like, what? Like, it's becoming commonplace, and I expect it, we only have interface problems. We don't have like technological problems necessarily, except for the gas on Ethereum. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, there's the technology's there. We just need better ways to present it for the consumers, and that's there's the yeah, we're almost there. I would say a couple more years.
I mean, yeah, I'm really excited about where we're at. We have since Bitcoin came out, we've had a tremendous explosion in bandwidth and computation and storage. So I think it's really just all software at this point. We have all the tools we need, all the building blocks to really to take it to mass adoption. And I think
Yeah,
NFTs are
yeah.
going to be a key piece of that.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope Ethereum, proof of stake comes out and it works. And so I'm like, we'll see a massive explosion of engagement activities on ETH. And I mean, we truly need that. Yeah, I mean, I don't see a
Yeah, I mean,
path going forward otherwise.
I'd love to see if this be a success too. I've tried to follow. I mean, not being a Ethereum developer, even just trying to follow and get some basics on what is going to happen with. I've seen the kind of like the big like architecture diagram, but I haven't even like basic questions. I've tried to Google and I can't find out like what's the proposed TPS going to be once they move fully to that 2.0 and stuff. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. This is the largest live migration of a blockchain like this ever. So it's a great, I mean, it's an interesting experiment for sure. And I'm
Oh
hoping
man,
it goes well.
yeah,
I think it will, but
yeah. I mean, I feel like with Ethereum, there's so many investors, like it has to work. Like
yes.
they can't pivot. They put in too much, so they'll make it work for sure. But yeah, I think one of the questions, I mean, this is a good one for both of us because I don't know the answer, but like, and it goes back to DAOs a little bit, but like,
Yeah.
We see all these people come into like Curio when the price goes up,
Yeah.
before price starts going up. They're like, you guys should make a DAO. I want to be part of it. We've had some like unsavory characters come in and be like, we want to throw in all this ETH, like just put it into a DAO, like let's go. And it's like, oh man, it feels so risky and toxic, and like, and then when the price of the tokens goes down, then everyone like disappears and they're not so interested. I think the question is, how do you balance those out? How do you balance out like and keep a sustainable level of interest? And I feel like we have that, but like having like tenants or like a foundation. So like, oh yeah, like when you go into hibernation mode, this is what it's like. And when new people come in, how do you adapt to them and like take them down a path to know that they're trusted and like like safe. It's like, oh man, it seems like every time there's a little bump in the price, like, have you guys thought about making a DAO? We should make a DAO. Like, have you guys tried this or tried that? It's like, oh man, it's so funny to see that.
It's interesting you bring that up. I'm glad you did, because that's also kind of like a little mini trend we've seen recently with some of these even historical projects where they're creating DAOs and some of them are issuing like utility tokens or like these fungible tokens for whatever purposes, and it's definitely interesting. Again, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out with some of these. Like you said, it's anytime you centralize a lot of resources in one organization, you need to think through it instead of just I don't know. I think caution is warranted, like you're saying.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, early on I was encouraging Curio not to do like one like monolithic dumpster DAO. I was like, do like please let's do like little small ones that you're like, oh, if you like marketing and like set up a marketing DAO. If you like the writing, do a writing. If you like content, support the content one. and then like just trust that those groups will come up with their own rewards mechanisms. And because I think yeah, it's just this having sustainable growth rather than having this like monolithic one with like just a few people with a few skills. It's better to be like, you know, put the, you know, just trust the people with those skills to produce the value. And but you know, it's like it's hard to find people till the price pumps, so to speak.
Well, I don't know about you, but the other thing that's hard too is that, and I guess this is probably true with most DAOs where people are essentially volunteering. Is we have to juggle IRL stuff like jobs and other IRL stuff. So it can just be. I mean, and also I don't know about you, but I'm in enough Discords where I don't know. It can be hard just to keep up with anything too. So there's times where you just can't, right?
Yeah, that's a challenge. Yeah, I mean, eventually everyone goes to this stuff full time, you know. But yeah, I think it's, you know, creating a culture around yeah, the acceptable form of communication. I mean, some people or some groups are like super resentful if you disappear for 6 months, you know, like, but I'm like, how do you yeah, how do you create a positive culture on that? Like, let's say I come into Curio and work like for 5 days straight and add all this value and then disappear for a year, you know, like some people will be pretty upset because they're like, oh, you know, and but yeah, I mean, we need better tools for that. We need better tools to kind of like, you know, maybe it's like a survey tool where it's like you come into a DAO and you're like, what type of person are you? Like, you know, what does your schedule look like? You know, maybe it takes a little more like understanding, or there's like a game you play before you enter into it, or like
Yeah.
I think there's like there's ways to determine you know reputation on how they participate in other ones, and I think eventually they'll be that. We'll have reputation for engagement in these different DAOs. I've seen there's like metrics for different DAOs from Masari. Masari's
Yeah.
like here's all the ETH DAOs, and you're like, oh man, and it shows like all the important proposals and they rate them and stuff. And over time, there's going to be so many of these things. You're going to be like, I need to
Right.
find a trusted. It's like finding a trusted board member,
Yeah.
you know, and it's a certain personality. It's like an opinion leader, and they're not going to be on just one DAO. They're going to, unless it's like they just truly only love that project and they're all in and they're making decisions every day like a job. But you know, to be one of those things, you have like a trusted, like some people on like hundreds of boards and they're just like
Wow.
yeah, just like I'll show up for this thing and vote on this or vote on that, or like, you know, and then so anyway, I think we'll see more metrics based on
You know,
you know,
that's
trust on these things. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Is that yeah, I didn't even think about that before, but you could essentially um, create essentially a future where we have professional DAO members.
Yeah.
I mean, where the rewards are such to where they can do that as their day job. And have that be, yeah, they'll be on maybe 20 DAOs that they serve on, or 10 DAOs. I mean, I don't know the whatever the workload for that would be, but yeah, exactly. That's
I
an
was
interesting.
I was oh so Alien Worlds, we had a booth at Game Developers Conference a few weeks ago in San Francisco, and that was a crazy experience, like a truly profound experience. So we, yeah, running the booth for 2 days, we're talking to all these game developers, talking to like C-levels from all these different companies, and like and everyone knew about NFTs, every single one. Like 99.9% of the people that showed up at the booth knew about NFTs. Only like maybe like one person didn't, and I'm like what? They're like a high school teacher or something like that. Anyway, whatever. So they but when we started digging into it, they didn't know, most of those people didn't know they could be used as utility within a game. They just thought
Yeah.
they would be using them as like a decoration in the game, or like but they didn't think of them as like keys to other levels, or like, you know, stuff that's like obvious to us, but they were like oblivious to these things. Then like, and then like 90% of the people have never heard of a DAO. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh man. But then the 10% of the people that heard about it,
Mhm.
most of those
Mhm.
have been in a DAO,
Mhm.
or they're in many DAOs.
Mhm.
And I was like,
Interesting.
oh man. So it's like, so I think
Mhm.
it's a certain type of person, like that type of board member that it's like once you get hooked, you get like really hooked.
Mhm.
Because it does take a special set of tools. It's a type of person that enjoys these coordination problems, and so yeah, I'm seeing that. Yeah, it's just another prediction. I mean, we'll see more of these, not just more tools around it, but yeah, like a type of culture coming out of that. And
Mhm.
so we'll have a new type of politician that
Mhm.
actually like adds direct value to their communities, so to speak.
Mhm. Speaking of common perceptions of NFTs, one thing I've seen some stories where the traditional game developers have tried to create their own versions of NFTs and games, and the reception by the so far of the gaming community has been really negative for the most part. I think that's really interesting because I would have expected the opposite, but I think one of the reasons we're seeing such a poor reception is because they've been some of these game companies have been super exploitive and have a terrible reputation now. But I would I would I would expect in a eventually we'll get to a point where even mainstream games are adopting and utilizing NFTs. It seems like a no-brainer to me. What are your thoughts on the subject?
Oh man, yeah, I heard about that as well. Um, but I also think it's like when I think of like the wall garden
Yeah.
that these games made, for some reason it always takes me to like the allegory of the cave, and they're
Yeah.
like, well, if you let this person that's just been like seeing this like this kind of like flat imagery like
Yeah.
for so long, and like like you give them this kind of like superficial value, then some of those people aren't gonna even want to go out of the cave. They're like, this is, I love this like this throwback mechanism where it's just like it's this internal process just for me. I don't have to interface with this whole other world. And so I think it's a big threat. I mean, talking to game developers, I mean, hold on, we talked to thousands of people. I personally talked to like a couple thousand people
Mhm.
a day for like 2 days, almost 3 days straight.
Mhm.
It was unreal. And I'm like, I was pointing out the differentiation of like, well, what does this look like if you in a traditional game versus a blockchain game? And it's two really obvious things. The first one is that well, what happens when the devs die or the
Exactly.
company disappears?
Mhm.
In the assets die, the game development dies, like you pretty much like you abandon the community, even though it's inadvertently in most cases. The community is like left with just this like this game that can't be extended, and it just sits there, or it doesn't even work. Maybe the APIs go down, they can't even like access it. Then so I asked them that, they're like, what, in blockchain games, like these are portable and you can use them in other games? And they're like, well, like, yeah, okay, that's cool. But then, and then I ask them like, well, what what about what would happen if like another community uses your assets? They're like, oh, well, of course we'd have to sue them. I'm like, well, in blockchain games, you actually you encourage that because you want those users to extend the functionality of those things. So it's like
That's
it's a different way of looking at it. There's a couple games we talked
Mhm.
to. This is the craziest conversation I had. A couple games are like, we made like AAA NFT games. I'm like big games. I literally, I'm not like telling anyone who said this, because they were like straight up like
Mhm.
we made some NFT games, but then it somehow got past legal before they became development, and then they released it. Legal's like, you can't do it. You have to scrap the whole thing. So they
Oh.
actually were about to release titles. And then they did some review, and they're like, how did this get past us? So you can't give out value this way to your consumers. Like, you just can't distribute it this way. And so I think there's a problem with traditional games, wherever they set up the traditional publishers, like they struggle with being able to actually execute NFT based games. Yeah,
Because
for legal purposes.
Yeah, because to your point, that's the thing that's the reason why I thought it would be obvious for gamers to have embraced it, like real NFTs, not bullshit NFTs, to embrace them, is because, like, an example that I keep thinking of is Counter-Strike. Is like with Counter-Strike Go, they have like I read that they have the market cap for all the skins is like $1 billion, right? So if I know, right? It's insane. So if Valve ever goes out of business, you lose, like you said, the community, and you lose all the assets. Where even if the game like fails per se, like let's say that Counter-Strike isn't played anymore in 20 years, you're still going to have some people that grew up with it, that used to play it, or were fans of it, that are going to want to, like, if it were on the blockchain, they could be like, hey, this gun skin was owned by this pro at this time. I mean, there'd be a little community that would be collecting and trading and showing off. I mean, I don't know, it prevents that whole possibility. I think the other thing that was interesting is, to your point about it being a threat too, though, is that Valve, which owns and runs Steam for PC games distribution, they've come out and forbid any blockchain games or NFTs in their in Steam. I mean, it was just so short-sighted.
I mean, I guarantee they went down that path, and legal is probably like, you can't do it. It's controversial, or it opens us up to security regulation, or who knows what. It's probably a combination of things that, I mean, when we architected these DAOs, we sought legal advice and legal counsel, and all of them said, don't do it. We're like, wait, we're going to pay you all this money to have you say, don't do this thing? Like, well, what's the point? Like, so then it was like, all right, well, like, I mean, we took a lot of that advice and, didn't make a security in any capacity, but it was like, it was interesting to just like see how it's so hard to interface with the traditional world. And so, yeah,
I think that's like an example of what I was talking about, where we're going to be in this gray zone or transition period, where eventually a group will release a game that is blockchain game that will be quote unquote overtly illegal in whatever jurisdiction that it was created, but it's gonna be released by, whether they're non-devs or whatever. I mean, yeah, it's really, yeah, it's going to be interesting. It'll be, I mean, because and to your point, what big traditional studio would want to open themselves up to legal liability? So, I mean, we could essentially see the next super big franchise be created and owned and operated by a DAO, right? Without any central entity to sue, right?
I think there's another trend, because I'm still thinking about that question you asked. Another trend, and like something that's will come up, is we'll see these traditional companies mint their own NFTs, and then you'll see other entities form communities around their IP, and we'll see a lot of controversy come out of that. So like Budweiser made these NFTs. Like, wouldn't it be funny if some other group, like some other beer company airdropped like a better NFT, or like, it gives them, or someone's like, hey, I'm going to have a party, log in, with your Budweiser NFT and vote on like where the party's at. And, so what I'm saying is that individuals or groups will extend the functionality of those NFTs in unexpected ways. And I think it's going to backfire a lot on those companies. That's just my prediction. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. One thing I was thinking when we were talking about games too is another like use case. Again, if companies were, instead of like you could have essentially, if you have like NFTs from a game, or like an NFT that's issued, let's say if you beat the game perfectly or whatever, or what a shield or whatever it is, you could have other games that are referencing and acknowledging that the fact that you have that asset, whether it brings it in as is or just affects that other game. So you can have these other games that essentially are going to they could essentially keep referencing these other games in the past that you've played. Like imagine if you have you play a modern game that still gives you like some sort of perk or reward for having beaten like Duck Hunt or Super Mario Brothers, I mean, that'd be really rad.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, it's all about those like and yeah, being able to like wrap up those one-on-one NFTs, and it shows the history and the lineage and what other things have attached to it. And yeah, I think all that's going to be yeah, it's like it carries reputation um, with that yeah, with that user, but then they can wrap it up. There's a game, a blockchain game called Blankos that's really interesting. And yeah, you can resell your characters and like you can play them in the game, and it like adds to their reputation and stuff. But yeah, I mean that's gonna be huge. I'm truly another then the final like thing I look forward to is like mass adoption not being necessarily like how the metaverse is portrayed to us through like this augmented reality. I think of more of like you just like you walk in the coffee shop and you grab a coffee and you walk out and you're not thinking about paying, and behind the scenes your needs are being met. And I think that to me is like the real metaverse. It's not about like some like kind of like absurd thing you have to like lock your wrap around your head or like plug into. I think it'll be a little more subtle and nuanced. It's less about the having to go into a virtual space and kind of check out. It's more about like plugging into communities near a terrestrial location. And I truly look forward to that. I mean, that's the only reason I'm involved with this technology, is because I want to apply it to meet needs of my actual community. Like how can we solve these like deeper problems? It's like why even work in any of this stuff if there's like homeless people down the street that are, or like there's like, I mean, there's just so many other problems to solve. And rather than just like plugging into something, getting further away from these issues, like being able to use these to solve these other issues is yeah, definitely my greater interest. And
That's really fascinating. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a lot to think of in terms of where we can go with the DAOs for sure. And like you said, the metaverse thing is. I was going to ask you about that too, and I forgot. But your take on where these on basically reusing some of these NFTs across the metaverse for different reasons too. I don't know if you think that's going to play out, or if you think we're going to end up with more of like a walled garden like metaverses, or if you think we're going to end up with kind of an open one succeeding.
yeah, I think there'll be a different, it's different types for different cultures.
Yeah.
So some people like the walled garden, like we talked about. Some people need guardrails. Some people prefer to be more free than others. And it's like there's different flavors of internet for different types of people. I mean, I think it's just going to copy that. Yeah, I remember showing you like tons of people the dark web stuff early on, just like check this out, like this is crazy, you can like get whatever you want. And I remember some people's reaction, like thinking like the cops are going to break in, and I'm like no, like literally we're just looking at this for informational purposes. We're not like doing anything illegal. Like you can look at this stuff without going to jail. And I mean, it'll be the same. They'll, like some places are suitable for kids, and like some places are not. And I think, all those cultures will come out of it. I'm sure the more interesting places will be those open source metaverses, but I suspect it's going to be really hard to access those. I suspect it's like they're going to try to make hardware features that prevent you from getting there. You're going to have to like run bootloaders and all that stuff if you want to get on that. But yeah, day-to-day interactions, I'm definitely concerned that there won't be non-custodial wallets to interface with these things. I suspect
That's a good point.
that's going to be problematic. They're going to want to centralize and yeah, control as much as possible.
Yeah, and when you don't control your keys, it's to me, it's not crypto. So, you know.
That is true. Yeah. Yeah, it's problematic. I was really impressed to see what Coinbase did with their NFT marketplace.
I haven't checked it
Because
out yet. Yeah.
yeah, so you don't have to, yeah, you're not signing in with a centralized wallet. And I didn't know that. It's all, it's the standard non-custodial wallets, and they have their own they're trying to push out, which is a pretty cool product. But other than that, yeah, to answer your question, I'm optimistic, but I think, we'll encounter the same problems. Like most people go through centralized services when when they interact with the internet. That's just how it is. It's not like you're just plugging into some node at a college for free. You have to connect through corporation. So yeah, it's definitely going to be controlled, but maybe just enough to feel like we're free.
Yeah. Well, that's that's a little ominous. I can see the value for some like brand new users to use the custodial service temporarily. I mean, just very temporarily until they get a hardware wallet set up. As I've seen we've had users that have used the software wallets like the Coinbase. They have an app wallet, and we had a Curio user that had all of their NFTs. I mean, it was what they said there was their life savings, and they didn't back up their seed phrase, and I think it was on an iPhone or an iPad, and after an update, it logged them out of their wallet, and that's it. I mean, it's
Yeah,
bad.
yeah, that shouldn't happen. Yeah, I mean, that's another interface problem that MetaMask has yet to resolve. It's like it should force you to like go to another device, pair another device, and like put your seed phrase on 2 devices or something, like
Yeah.
have redundancy in that process. Because just like putting it, confirming it or putting it back into it doesn't confirm you truly
Well,
backed it up.
especially if your backup is on the same device that you're logged into too. So if someone shoots your computer, then game over, right? If you didn't actually back it up off the computer.
Yeah, for sure. And oh man, yeah, that doesn't work. I mean, and with NFTs are so expensive too. It's like, yeah. I mean, I guess people do the same thing with crypto all day long, but yeah, I think I mean that is the advantage of centralizing stuff, is that you can always go back to the central authority and be like, no, I truly lost it. Like, please remint this for me or replace this. But yeah, it's not crypto, it's something else.
No, it's something that I don't want a part of. So
Yeah, totally. But yeah, there's some interesting architecture on like play to earn mechanics where the user gets points, and then you're just like keeping it on like an internal ledger, and then when they get to a certain amount, then they can there's an inter-blockchain communication that converts the points to the actual crypto on a public ledger. So there is that, but I don't like that. Like it feels kind of gross. It's like, and
I want as much as possible to be on the blockchain, and on L1 as possible. I mean, that's again, that should be the source of truth, right?
Yes, absolutely. But I mean, ultimately, like the players don't care. The players are just like, I just want to extract value. How do I extract value? But yeah, I mean, it's important to have education around all those things. Like you need to, like, those users should know what those other options are. And eventually there'll be so many accidents on these second layers that it's going to be like, oh, like, yeah, we should just go with this. So, and I think those ones will rise to the top. Those ones will be the more important ones, where people make applications that live generations and you can't take them down. It's like this adds value perpetually. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I guess the final thing I just popped into my mind, and final thing is just to comment on. We had so we've been talking about gaming and blockchain games and whatnot. Just what was a few weeks ago, we had Axie Infinity. They had a wallet that they're using using essentially the equivalent of a hot wallet in a server where that got compromised because they weren't using proper OPSEC, and that got drained of over $500 million worth of ETH at the time. So I mean, it's to me, I was truly shocked that anyone would be so reckless, especially with that. I mean, with that amount of money on the line, it's I don't know, it's shocking. So I'm hoping we'll see a little bit more practical safety measures in the future too. So it's shocking.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I mean, oh man, yeah, I feel like a lot of these things should have been tested before deploying them, you know, like have extensive testing in on that. Yeah, it just feels like you were just too eager to go all in. And I mean, it's the company's responsibility for not preventing that many transactions as well. It's like they're definitely liable, like for you know, for that being a reality.
And regardless, why would you keep, even if you needed to use a hot wallet, why would you keep all of that in a hot wallet? It's irresponsible.
I think the bridges are going to be interesting because it'll be like, we only keep this much in a bridge. And then it's like, you know, it's like you can only send up to this much. And so I think the bridges will be a real thing, but they actually are going to have to add like breakpoints between them and like offload some of that into, you know, cold storage and things like that, and allow like a time delay and they're going to have to, you know, create a little friction to make those extra secure. I mean, it's going to happen over and over on those bridges. So,
well, the way I look at it too, when the crypto mining started to become a thing, the way I looked at it is that we essentially we've created an economic incentive now for like to essentially incentivize people to secure their devices, because if they don't, there's an economic incentive for hackers to turn compute into crypto. So we've essentially in a roundabout way, we've created incentives to secure the internet. And that's kind of I guess another way of looking at what were these exploits in the crypto space too. The incentives are there now. So the incentives are now there also to secure it. Whereas before, you know, there was no hammer to drive that home.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's an excellent point. Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to cover, or?
Oh man, I think we got most of it. But yeah, if there's anything else you can think of, I'm definitely down to chat again sometime, or chat with other artists as well.
Sure.
All sorts of things come up there. Yeah, I think it'd be fun to do like a roundtable also, get like,
Yeah, that'd be fun.
like when I've hung out with Daniel on some calls, I get inspired. I mean, same with Robeck and yeah, like just get super inspired. Other themes come up that I wouldn't normally talk about too. So
oh yeah. Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, this has been a fun conversation. So